what percentage of our expectations are out of selfish ambition?
Yeah, for sure.
You know, it's like, do I have an expectation in marriage because of what it's going to do for me, how it's going to benefit me, how it's going to make me look to other people?
Yeah, that's good.
Like, what's the root of that? Like, am I expecting you to do these things for me so that I can post about it on social media so that everyone thinks that, you know, we just have it all together? Like, why? Like, that is the root of selfish ambition for sure. And so if the point of marriage is to reflect God's glory, and in doing that to serve each other, are my expectations focused on my spouse, or are they focused on myself?
Yeah. Hey, welcome to the Greater Marriage Podcast. We're so glad that you joined us today. Wherever you are, driving in the car, on your lunch break at the office, sitting at home, man, we just are so glad that you decided to join in with us in this conversation. We love to come together every single week and talk about marriage and talk about the word and relationships and family and how the word can transform your relationship and your situation like he did ours. And we're going to get a little bit personal today, talk about some stories and how we met and how we came together. And, you know, the whole kind of subject today is if marriage wasn't what you expected, you're not alone. And I think that we can speak from experience here on expectations and what it looked like to come into our marriage. We navigated a lot, and I'm excited to get into it. But anyways, how are you doing today, baby?
Good. So our marriage isn't what you expected?
Our marriage is everything I expected and more.
Have there been moments in our marriage that were the opposite of what you expected?
There were probably years of our marriage that were opposite of what I expected. Did we catch up? Did we make it? We made it, babe. And we're still growing and we're still learning. But it is funny because that's kind of what I want to get to today, is that maybe your expectations don't matter as much as you think they do. But we'll get into that. We'll get into that in 10, 15, 20 minutes. We'll see how long-winded I am, I guess. But
well, always long-winded.
You see. Was that what you expected, me being long-winded? I think you knew that coming in, right?
I for sure knew that coming in. I think I figured that out like week one.
Okay, good deal.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you hung in there, and it never changed. I hope that was part of the expectations and not something that just came along with it that you were like, shoot, I didn't realize the long-windedness and, how serious that was and that it wasn't going to go away.
Well, I mean, look at you now.
Look at me now.
Just doing things.
Doing things.
Well, I think if we're all being honest, we could all say that at least a piece of our marriage does not look the way we expected it to, or at least in a season did not look the way we expected it to. And sometimes that's a harsh reality to face. Sometimes that's a hard pill to swallow. And so that's what we're going to dive into today. How you handle those situations when you come to that place of, oh my gosh, this isn't what I expected. The good, the bad, the ugly. Yep. I think we can have expectations that maybe were low and they've been exceeded. And in those moments, it's like we are wowed by our spouse, especially in the early years, right? The dating years, the newlywed stage, everything feels like a wow moment.
Yeah.
When he opens the door every time, when she makes the best meal ever, and it's just like, my life is going to be just perfect forever. Rainbows and butterflies. Every expectation is exceeded. And then you get married and realize that that's not an everyday thing, right?
And it's funny because, I think that for some couples, this surfaces really quickly. It's like, year one, all these things come to surface. You're living with one another. You realize like maybe their feet stink, maybe their breath stinks, maybe they have weird habits, maybe they're dirty, like whatever. Maybe they're dirty. I'm talking about myself right now. But maybe they're dirtier than you expected. Maybe whatever. Like things can just surface real quick that you're like, don't love that. And so let's maybe work that out. Let's talk about this. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, we've talked to couples that look up 7, 8, 9, 10 years down the road. And it's like, I didn't realize that this wasn't what I expected. But looking up now, examining my marriage now, take a moment out of the busyness of life and the everyday, business of marriage and family and work and all the things, you all of a sudden look up and it's like, hang on, I'm not living the life that I expected to live. And so I think that there's several different ways that couples can kind of stumble into this. I think that it can surface real quick and something pops up and it's like, don't love that. Or it can just be years of letting things slide. And all of a sudden you look up and it's like, man, I'm not where I thought I was going to be. And maybe that's maybe that's you that didn't put in the work that you thought you were going to put in, or hadn't accomplished everything that you thought you were going to accomplish. And you begin to blame your spouse or your kids or your whatever. Maybe it's your spouse that you look at them and it's like, man, things have changed, or you changed, or whatever. Maybe it's an outside circumstance that caused and had an effect on your marriage, your relationship, your spouse, whatever. But again, it can happen in many different ways.
Sometimes I think personality plays into it a lot too. I remember in premarital counseling, he talked about rose-colored glasses and which one of you wears the rose-colored glasses. If you haven't heard that phrase before, basically meaning that you see everything through the lens of positivity, and it takes you a little bit longer to get to that place of reality. Because you're just blinded by all the great things.
Blinded by the light.
Maybe.
Wrapped up like a deuce.
I don't know what that word actually is
family.
supposed to be.
We're asking you. Comment the lyrics of that song that you think. So this is funny. Speaking of rose-colored glasses, like those Coke bottle glasses that make your eyes look like 8 times the size that they are. I think those are the rose-colored glasses I was wearing. I think that I remember our premarital counselor. That's a really hard dig. Let me finish this. It's not a rip. It's not a dig at all. Listen to this. I remember our premarital counselor saying, Dustyn, you're pretty optimistic. You've got some rose-colored glasses on. Yeah. Probably looking at like my performance as a husband. Like, listen, I don't know if you realize this, Tim. I'm gonna crush this thing. Like we're doing premarital counseling, and it's like, Dustyn, I think you think this is gonna be a little bit easier than it is. And I don't know that your glasses had any rose in them. Like, I think you were pretty...
Zero rose.
You were pretty down. You're pretty crystal clear.
Crystal clear, just how I like it.
Yeah, I think that you pretty much knew coming in what you were getting into.
Okay, well, also, other things that play here. I had been married and widowed before, so understood just in general what the dynamic of marriage looked like. I had only been married 3 years when my first husband passed away, but still had a light understanding of marriage. This was your first marriage that you were stepping into. And I think when he talked about the rose-colored glasses, yes, your personality lends that way anyway, but he knew, having also been formerly widowed, he knew the weight that comes with that. And I think maybe that's an area that the expectation was a little bit covered in the rose-colored glasses for you. Like, you knew obviously you were marrying someone who had been married before and widowed, and that grief was going to come and go in waves, but I don't think that you knew the depth of that and everything that would entail. And that's not just to say, that is how it is in marriages that someone has been widowed before. I think when people have been in a prior marriage, that resulted in divorce, or even just a really serious long-term relationship, there are experiences that happen within those relationships that, whether you want to admit it or not, get carried into the next relationship and can definitely affect how you handle situations.
Yeah, I think that I wasn't prepared for the amount of insecurity I'd feel and the comparison game that I would play in my head with you being married before. And we've talked about this, and I loved, Nathan was a friend of mine and loved him dearly, and honestly looked up to him and realized how incredible of a guy he was. And I think that I felt like I needed to live up to, he was a Marine and he was cool and he was all the things. And I think that obviously it's a different dynamic, knowing that there was still love in your heart for him. It's not like it ended badly, right? And so I think navigating that was definitely much harder than I thought it was going to be. I definitely was way more insecure than I thought I was going to be. The comparison was much harder than I thought it was going to be. I think that my response was very unhealthy. I didn't know how to handle conflict. I didn't know how to handle that level of insecurity. I didn't know how to handle maybe what I felt like rejection that was never rejection at all. And so I think that I developed some unhealthy habits and just I didn't understand. I didn't know how to navigate it. And so not only was that, expectation different for me, that wasn't what I expected, right? Just the feeling I was feeling. I don't think you're supposed to feel like this in marriage. And then all of a sudden my response was also unexpected, I think, even to me, and just kind of running from you and stiff arming you because of what I was feeling on the inside and not being able to be real about it and have conversations about it because I didn't want you to feel any type of guilt. I didn't want you, and I felt like it was for your best interest that I stonewalled you a little bit because I didn't want you to know what I was feeling. I didn't want you to know what I was going through. I didn't want you to know how bad it hurt. I didn't want you to know that I was thinking every single day with everything I did, am I living up to her expectation and am I doing this good enough? And like, am I a man enough? Am I whatever? And I think that's a deep moment. That's not like you're not meeting my expectation of whatever. That's like, I didn't realize the emotions I would feel walking into a marriage. I felt like, to be honest, being a young Christian dude, I was like, sex is going to cover a multitude of sins. Like, it doesn't matter how we feel. It doesn't matter what we think. Like, because
you're just gonna have sex and
we get to have
everything
sex
else
and it's gonna cover everything and we're gonna be great. And I do think that sex is healing. I do think that we've talked about how the physical part of our relationship can just kind of wipe away some of the surface stuff that we deal with and some of the dumb frustrations and whatever that we have with one another. But I think that we were best friends and coming into our relationship, we talk all the time. We're talking on the phone all the time. And I think I got to the place where you went from the person that I wanted to talk to all day, every day, to the person that I didn't want to talk to at all because I was afraid of what would come out. I was afraid of what was happening, what was going on the inside of me. And because of the insecurity I felt and because of the feelings that I was working through, I think that it caused distance between us. And we just kind of got to a breaking point, to be honest. And I think that, maybe some of you have gotten there. Maybe some of you, for whatever reason, whether it's something that was going on the inside of you, that you began to try to protect your spouse. Maybe you just didn't handle those things the correct way. You didn't bring it to light, or you didn't bring it to light the right way, or you tried to change something else, hoping it would change the way you felt. However you navigated that, if you navigated it the wrong way, realize that like our God is a God of another chance and another chance, and He's not the God of a second chance, right? He wants you. His mercies are new every single morning. And so I think that we need to give our spouses that same amount of grace and give ourselves that same amount of grace and be able to see that, like, man, if you've gotten to a point where the expectation isn't being met, maybe because of something you did or even something that your spouse did, I think that a reset, and we can talk about this in a moment, but I think that a reset is in order for yourself, for your heart, for your marriage. I think that you guys can come together and have a moment where you reset your expectations and communicate clearly.
Yeah, something interesting you said a little bit ago was just how it surprised you. Like, you surprised yourself with how you responded. And sometimes our defense mechanisms are shocking to us.
Yeah.
We don't realize why we have a certain defense mechanism, where it even came from, until all of a sudden it surfaces. And it's like, ooh, I don't even recognize that person, or I didn't even know that root issue was there. So what do you do in those moments when you see maybe an angle of yourself responding in a certain way that you don't like, and you don't like what it does to your marriage, the impact it makes on your marriage? What do you do? Where do you go from there?
Yeah. I love this saying, and our pastor says it all the time. We say to our kids, you see it, you own it, right? And so you see something in your marriage, you see something in your own life that you don't like, man, own that thing. And if you own something, you take responsibility for it. And so when I saw that in myself, I think it took me a long time to want to own it. I think just my pride, again, the insecurity, which pride and insecurity are generally the same thing. It's like my insecurity and my pride wouldn't allow me to own it, wouldn't allow me to admit that I was feeling what I was feeling, wouldn't allow me to admit that it affected me as much as it affected me, wouldn't allow me to admit that maybe I had developed some sin habits to try as a coping mechanism to try to cope with whatever I was dealing with, and not thinking about you the right way and not talking to you the right way, and the way that I treated, you or our relationship or even myself. I mean, you just begin to kind of degrade the entire situation whenever you don't own things, right? Because your secrets will make you sick. And so those things living on the inside of me that I wasn't able to get out were just kind of rotting me from the inside out. And it was pouring into our marriage. It was pouring into everything, right? And so I think that when you see that, you need to own it, take responsibility for it, and dig up that root, right? The fruit that you see is always a sign of a root issue, right? And so the fruit's never the issue. You can chop the dead fruit off, but it's going to grow back. And so pruning is in order, but so is root work. And so you've got to remove everything that causes the tree to not be healthy. Right. It's not just about ingesting healthy things. I think that people go out and they listen to podcasts and they read books and they try to ingest all of this healthy information without ever digging up the unhealthy habits that they have. And it is great to listen to podcasts. It is great to read books. It is great we should be relearning how to be married, how to be a man, how to be a woman of God, all of these things. But in that, we have to allow that healthy information. Obviously Paul says, think on these things, whatever's true, whatever's noble. Like, yes, we have to we have to set our minds on the things of God, but we also have to do some root work to dig up unhealthy habits, dig up unhealthy expectations. Let's talk about that for a moment. What expectations do people walk into marriage with, and where do those expectations come from? Right? I think that it's different for everyone. You can speak to that a little bit. I think it's different for a guy than it is for a girl. I think it's different for people who grew up in Christian homes and didn't. I think it's different for people who grew up in broken homes and people who grew up in healthy homes. You can carry in, I want my marriage to look like my parents, exactly like my parents. I want my home to be just like that. It was perfect. My upbringing was perfect. Or it can be the exact opposite. I don't ever want it to look like that thing. What do you feel like are some of the expectations that people walk into marriage with, and where do those expectations come from?
Gosh, I mean, it's a huge, huge array. They can come from your upbringing. They can come from your situations that you've been through. They can come from prior relationships around you that maybe you see and idolize. Media, dear Lord, I mean, what they portray as an ideal marriage. Everywhere we look, these expectations can come into play. I think the tricky part, the dangerous part, is when those expectations are not communicated, because that's just a breeding ground for dissatisfaction, and when those expectations are unmet, bitterness begins to seep in, and before you know it, you've stonewalled your spouse, whether it was your doing, whether it was because of their actions. It really doesn't matter where those expectations come from. And so there's this responsibility that we have as husband and wife to, first of all, self-evaluate, look at, be honest with ourselves and say, I do have this expectation, because sometimes those expectations are there and we don't want to admit that they're there. Maybe I think at my core, my husband should be doing just as much of the house cleaning as I am, but I'm home, so I'm taking on more of it. But then I'm frustrated because really at my core, I don't believe what I say out loud. And so this bitterness comes in, and that could be any example. Throw whatever you want in there. And so,
do you feel like that one was from experience? So keep going. Yeah, go ahead.
No. But I mean, fill in the blank, whatever it is. And so having that honest conversation with yourself and really saying, why do I have this expectation? Is it healthy? Is it not healthy? And can we get on the same page with it? Because if I'm not communicating an expectation to you, but then expecting you to live up to it, that's unfair. That's selfish on my part. If I'm expecting something of you that you're not on board with, recipe for disaster. Hello. Yeah. And so it all goes back to communication and having conversation about what you want your marriage to look like. And the great news is we're in charge of that.
Yeah.
We get to choose what it looks like.
I think that another question we need to ask ourselves is, have we made our expectations an idol? Some people, I think that if their marriage doesn't look a certain way, if their expectations aren't met, they feel like their marriage is broken or like it's not okay or it's not healthy. And I think that we idolize a certain, I think that, girls can grow up and they just think of, I just want that Prince Charming and I just want everything to be perfect. I want him to swoon me. And I think that boys and girls can both grow up with just the wrong idea of what a spouse is, what a marriage is, and we can kind of idolize what we think our spouse should be or what we think our marriage should be, and we kind of put that on the throne of like, my life is perfect if my marriage looks like this, or the perfect spouse for me looks like this, and then we get into it and it's like, wait, this isn't like, when I look at my idol, this doesn't line up to that, and it's like, hang on, what God told Moses is, what's in your hand? What has God given you? Let's look at the spouse God's given you, and let's look at their good qualities. Let's look at why you fell in love with them, and let's maybe reassess our idol of expectation, right? Because Jesus is on the throne, and that's the only thing we can put on the throne of our lives. And no expectation, no experience, no whatever premeditated thought or what this should be will ever take that throne of our hearts. And so I think that we can reassess that and say, God, you are on the throne. Put you first in everything that I do. I am going to cherish, the word of God says to cherish the wife of your youth. And so it's like, I am going to cherish the wife that God has given me, and I'm going to cherish the wife of my youth, and I am going to work this marriage. I'm going to cultivate this marriage. I'm going to be a good steward of what God has given me and not expect you to meet my needs, right? Like my needs are met according to his riches and glory in Christ Jesus. And so our needs are met by the Lord. Our joy is in the Lord. Our hope is in the Lord. Should your marriage be joy-filled? Yes. Should your marriage be hope-filled? Yes. Should your spouse make you happy, make you laugh? Yes, absolutely. But if they are the only source of those things in your life, they're going to let you down every time because they're human. And so we've got to be able to, I think, reassess that thought and maybe not lower our expectations, but lower the place on the shelf that we put those expectations, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I was also just thinking, what percentage of our expectations are out of selfish ambition?
Yeah, for sure.
It's like, do I have an expectation in marriage because of what it's going to do for me, how it's going to benefit me, how it's going to make me look to other people?
Yeah, that's good.
Like, what's the root of that? Like, am I expecting you to do these things for me so that I can post about it on social media so that everyone thinks that, we just have it all together? Like, why? Like, that is the root of selfish ambition for sure. And so if the point of marriage is to reflect God's glory, and in doing that to serve each other, are my expectations focused on my spouse, or are they focused on myself?
Yeah.
Because those are two completely different things. And I mean, social media too, it is just the devil's playground.
Oh, for
like,
sure.
Girls especially, we see on social media these influencers, and they're just living the most perfect, dreamy life with their spouse. And, these videos of their spouse doing this for them, and, their husband's sweating on the floor, scrubbing the floors and all of it. And it's like, we've got to stop. We've got to stop letting that be the goal.
Yeah.
Because I'm not gonna lie, I followed a lot of influencers, and a couple of years ago I went through and unfollowed all of them because I'm like, this is unfair. It's unfair for me to be seeing this picture of something that isn't even reality. They're portraying it like it is reality. Not saying that there aren't influencers that have great marriages, sure, but are they putting on display the difficulty of marriage equally?
Right.
As the great parts of marriage? No, of course they're not.
Right.
And so for me to just see that over and over and over, whether I want to admit it or not, there's this deep seed that is being planted in my heart, and that bitterness is just waiting to grow up. So wives, I'm going to challenge you, take a look at who you're following on social media and what it's potentially doing to your heart, because that is going to flow into your marriage. That's going to flow into the way that you view your husband. And it's dangerous and it's not worth it. I mean, to be honest, you probably don't know 99.99% of them anyways. So they don't care if you're not following them. Toss them out if it's not infusing health into your marriage. If it's doing the opposite, there's no place for it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's kind of switch to the other side of it now. So we've talked a lot about your expectations, and what I don't want to communicate is that you need to lower your expectations, or that your expectations are always wrong, or that you can't set expectations, or that your expectations and your feelings don't matter, because they do. And we should want to find a spouse, have a spouse that does make us happy. You do. We do have a lot of fun together, and you do bring so much peace to my life and structure to my life, and I am madly in love with you, and we have really hard times, and you frustrate the fire out of me sometimes, and I return the favor. Like it's all of it in one, right? Yeah. And so it's like I don't want to communicate that, well, maybe if your expectations aren't met, your expectations are tiny, you should just suck it up and live with what you have, because we want your marriage to be greater. That is the whole of our ministry. That is our heart for every single couple, right? And so making this applicable, how do we make our marriage greater if we feel like our expectations have not been met? Whether that is if you're a year in and it's like, man, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And so quickly, did I marry the wrong person? Did I make a mistake? What do I do? Or if somebody is looking up 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road and saying my life doesn't look like I thought it was going to be, how can we make the adjustment to working with what we've got, what God has given us, cultivating, nurturing, being a good steward of what God has given us, and turning this thing around and making our marriage greater if we're in that position?
Yeah. So I hit on this a little bit. First of all, I think we have to turn the arrow to ourselves and figure out what expectations we really have and why we have those expectations. Get with the Lord, figure out which ones need to stay, which ones need to go. And then once you're at that place, getting together with your spouse, not in a way of like, hey, can we talk? You're not meeting my expectations.
Right.
But this place of, hey, how do you feel about our marriage? Where do you see we're kind of lacking? Are you satisfied in this area? Is this area the way that you would ideally like for it to look? And approach it as a team together, because that's what you are. And together make a plan. If there's one specific area of your marriage that you feel like is, the area that is lacking the most, maybe it's the physicality of your marriage. Maybe it's the finances in your marriage, whatever it is, like focus on that and then make a game plan. Like you're in charge, you get to decide. So it's like, hey, do we want to just go like balls to the wall with this thing and like we're going to attack this and give ourselves the time frame and say, hey, in 6 months, I don't ever want to talk about this again? Or are we going to give ourselves a little more time and say, hey, let's work on this little piece of it now, and then in 6 months, let's work on this piece of it. I mean, if we have the rest of our lives and we're doing that, let's say we're biting off 6-month chunks. Yep. There's a lot of 6 months in the rest of your life. And so there's a lot of areas that we can attack, improve, and then the expectations are going to be met and exceeded.
That's so good. Love that you use the term balls to the wall. It's a great one.
I think I learned that from you.
Probably. Joe Dirt. I totally agree. And I think that you made a great point, and you get to build the marriage that you want to have. Mm-hmm. It's you and your spouse, right? And maybe you feel like your spouse is going to be, what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe your spouse isn't going to receive this well. I wouldn't make that conversation an attack. Don't say, hey, is there anything you're unhappy with? Because I've got a list. So it's like, allow your spouse, even if they're caught off guard, if your spouse is like, what are we doing here? It's like, hey, I know there are areas that I could be better. Mm-hmm. And there's areas that I think you could be better. And I think that we could both be happier in this. What do you want our marriage to look like? And what do I want our marriage to look like? And maybe those are two different pictures. Okay, well, let's find something. Let's find where we can unite on this. Let's reconcile these two ideas and let's bring it together and let the Lord be a part of it. Again, we talk all the time about inviting the Holy Spirit into your situation and saying, Lord, what do you want our marriage to look like? How do you want us to serve other people? How do you want us to be a benefit to the world, to show the love of Christ? Okay, what do you want our home to look like? What do you want our marriage to look like? What do you want our communication to look like? It's like, begin to write those things down. And like you said, man, make a plan to move forward. And many of the plans of a man's heart, but the Lord directs his step. Let the Lord direct you. Ask God, how do I have this conversation? God, how do I go about making these changes? And I think that if you try, like you said, if you try to do it all at once, it's going to be very overwhelming. And you may walk out of that conversation depleted. And you may walk out of that conversation saying, there's actually more that we need to work on than I thought. Maybe our marriage isn't as great as I even thought walking into that. I was trying to fix the 1%, and now I've got 90% that I need to fix. And that can be devastating. Give yourself the opportunity to breathe and to say, you know what, I'm in this forever. I'm in this for life on purpose, and I've made a decision. I'm in covenant. And so I'm going to honor that covenant, and I'm going to see this thing through. And we always talk about having long-term vision, man. Have long-term vision for your marriage and be able to break it down and create the marriage that you want. Maybe, again, we've said, maybe your expectations come from a lofty place that isn't even realistic for where you live, for who you married, for what the life you've built, for the dreams you have, right? Like, I would love to have a yacht. I would love to, I would love to have
I can
a
think of a
Corvette
lot
in the
of
driveway.
things, a lot of things that I would have rather than a yacht.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a lot of dollars. I could do a lot of things with a lot of dollars.
Yeah, it probably doesn't fit into our life plan right now. We have 3. I'd rather have 3 kids. I'd rather put my 3 kids in private school. Like, I'd rather save for their future. I'd rather build a legacy for them. There's a million other things I'd rather do than like scratch this itch of that would be cool.
But hey, if a yacht fits your lifestyle, I know a guy who you can call.
Call me. If a yacht fits your lifestyle, we'd love a weekend away. So, and if your kids babysit, shoot, hit us up. But anyways, I'm rambling now, but I think you made all phenomenal points. I think that I want our hearers, our listeners to realize is that, man, no matter where you are, no matter how far you are from that original expectation, you can reassess and go to God and go to your spouse and have an honest conversation and say, where do we go from here? Let's reset my expectations from where we are right now. I'm going to forget the past, right? I love that Hosea 2 idea of marriage where God says, I'm going to wipe the names of your other gods. I'm going to wipe the name of Baal out of your mouth and you'll never speak of him again. We're not talking about the past. We're not talking about what we used to do. We're not talking about what we wanted before. We're going to talk about right now. And we're going to grow from where we're at right now. And it's going to be better from right here. We're going to be able to look back on this day and say, man, that's the day that our marriage turned around. And that's the day that my expectations began to be exceeded.
Yeah. And I would bet if you could approach that conversation in humility, humble enough to say, hey, what areas do you see that need improvement? Before you lay your own stuff out, asking your spouse, I would bet that something that they say is going to be reflected in your unmet expectations. Man, there's so much to say about, if I have this expectation that's not being met and I'm frustrated and I come to you and I'm like, what's going on? And you bring up this other expectation that maybe they're fighting against each other.
Wait, we both hate that. We're both doing it.
Or they're fighting against each other.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's like you have an expectation that's on the right. I have an expectation that's on the left. And we're both equally frustrated with each other because we're fighting against each other without even realizing it. But you never reach that place of discovery without having honest conversations to get there. And so have those conversations. That is how you make your marriage greater today. That is our challenge for you this week, to have an honest conversation with your spouse about what your expectations are in marriage, what you want them to be, and what steps you can take to move the needle a little bit this week, and maybe a little bit more this month, and a little bit more in 6 months. And then in a year, you're going to look back and be in a completely different place than you were.
That's so good, babe. Man, thank you guys so much for joining us today. I hope this blessed you. As always, man, please like, subscribe, share this with a friend, share this with your spouse. You can share it on social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. You can jump on our website, greatermarriage.com. We have resources for you there. We just want to hear from you. We want to connect with our Greater Marriage family. So make sure that you follow us on social media, shoot us a message, drop us a comment. We love to hear suggestions of what you want to hear. We love to hear feedback on things that we've said before. And so make sure that you do that. Leave us feedback, ask us questions, connect with us. And then today, as you go, be great. That was a weird ending. That felt like a children's show. As you go, be great. Let's try. And so if you try that again, I think we're okay. I'm going to leave all that in.